The conference room was cold. Tay sat at the long metal table, surrounded by beings that didn't look human at all. To his left, Commander Vexir glowed softly, his crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns. The Voth always looked beautiful, even when they were angry. And Vexir was definitely angry. 3 colonies, the commander said, his voice like wind chimes. 3 colonies destroyed, and your calculations predicted none of them. Tay felt his stomach twist. He had spent 6 weeks building his models. He had analyzed every attack pattern, every ship movement, every energy signature the enemy left behind. His computer had processed over 10,000 variables. The Galactic Coalition's best artificial intelligence had checked his work. Everyone agreed his predictions were solid, and they had all been completely wrong. The Nim attacked from the outer rim, Tay said quietly. Our model showed only a 3% probability of that approach. It made no strategic sense. Perhaps that is the problem, said Ambassador Throw. The Morvain diplomat's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. Humans always search for sense. You build your towers of logic so high that you cannot see the ground anymore. Across the table, Ambassador Kai shifted uncomfortably. The human diplomat had defended Earth's analytical methods for months. Strategic analysis has worked for thousands of years, Kai said. Every civilization uses it. Every civilization except the Nim, apparently, Vexia replied. And that is why they are winning. The meeting ended badly. Tay gathered his data tablets and left quickly. In the hallway, Kai caught up with him. Don't let them get to you, Kai said. Your work is good. Sometimes the enemy just gets lucky. 3 times in a row? Tay shook his head. That's not luck. I'm missing something. I just don't know what. What Tay didn't know was that his sister was about to change everything. Hannah hated supply runs. Hauling food and equipment to remote stations was boring work, the kind of job they gave to pilots who weren't trusted with real missions. But at 24 years old, Hannah had a reputation. Too impulsive, her commander had written in her last review. Makes decisions without proper analysis. That was why she was flying a cargo ship to Science Station Vara instead of flying patrol with the real pilots. She didn't care much. Flying was flying. Her ship's computer beeped. Approaching Science Station Vara, estimated arrival in 30 minutes. Hannah looked at the station through her viewport. It was a small facility, just a ring of modules connected to a central hub. About 40 scientists lived there, studying debris from Nim attacks. Boring stuff. Then something felt wrong. Hannah couldn't explain it. The sensors showed nothing unusual. The station's communications were normal. Space looked empty in all directions. But something in her gut twisted uncomfortably. Computer, run a full sensor sweep. Look for anything weird. The computer hummed. All readings normal. No anomalies detected. The feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. Hannah, the Science Station Vara, she said into her comm. Do you have any security concerns? Anything unusual happening? A bored voice answered. Negative, cargo ship. Everything is quiet. We've got your docking clearance ready. Hannah bit her lip. The feeling in her gut was screaming now. Every instinct she had said to turn around and leave. But she had no reason. The data said everything was fine. The station said everything was fine. If she left now, she'd have to explain why. They'd probably add paranoid to her file next to impulsive. She made a decision. Science Station Vara, I'm picking up some weird readings on my ship. I need to return to base for maintenance. Sorry. We're not showing anything on our sensors, the station replied. Yeah, it's an internal issue. My problem, not yours. I'll send another ship tomorrow. Hannah out. She turned her ship around and accelerated away. Behind her, the station's voice crackled with annoyance. but she ignored it. The feeling in her gut started to fade as she put distance between herself and the station. 20 minutes later, Science Station Vara exploded. The blast was massive. Hannah's rear sensors caught it, and her ship rocked from the shockwave even at her distance. She stared at the screen in shock. Where the station had been, there was now only debris and fire. Computer, what happened? Scanning. Multiple Neum energy signatures detected. The station was destroyed by enemy weapons. Hannah's hands shook on the controls. 40 people had just died, and she had almost been there with them. If she had listened to the data instead of her gut, she would be dead right now. She reported the attack immediately. Coalition ships arrived within hours, but there was nothing left to save. The NIM had vanished as quickly as they appeared. 3 days later, Tay received a message from Fleet Command. Your sister's ship was near the Vara station attack. She left minutes before it was destroyed. Recommend you check on her status. Tay called Hannah immediately. Her face appeared on his screen, looking tired. I'm fine, she said before he could ask. I don't know. I got lucky. The report said you left because of equipment problems, Tay said. But the inspection found nothing wrong with your ship. Hannah looked away. Yeah, I lied about that. Why did you leave? I don't know. Something felt wrong. I can't explain it better than that. Tay leaned back in his chair. His sister had survived because she felt something was wrong. Not because she analyzed the data. Not because she ran calculations. Just because something felt wrong. That's the 17th time, Tay said quietly. What? I looked at your service record. You've avoided danger 17 times over the past 3 years. Situations where you changed course or left early for no logical reason. And every time, something bad happened right after you left. Hannah frowned. I never thought about it that way. I just react to things without thinking? Yeah, is that bad? Tay thought about the coalition commanders calling humans overthinkers. He thought about his failed predictions and useless models. He thought about an enemy that didn't follow any logical patterns. No, he said slowly. Maybe it's exactly what we need. In Coalition Command, Admiral Torvin of the Kelleran was reading the same report about Hannah's escape. The six-armed alien tapped his fingers on his desk, thinking. Around him, other commanders were arguing about strategy, building new models, creating more predictions. But Torvin was looking at something else. He was looking at one human pilot who seemed to avoid danger without trying. One pilot who didn't overthink. One pilot who just knew it was impossible, of course. Intelligence meant analysis. Strategy meant planning. That was how the universe worked. But the NIM were also impossible. And they were winning. Torvin made a decision. He would suggest something that would probably get him laughed at. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Maybe it was time to stop thinking so much and start trusting something else entirely. The trap was perfect. At least, that's what everyone said. Tay stood in the Coalition war room, watching the holographic display show the positions of 200 warships. Every vessel was exactly where his calculations said it should be. The artificial intelligence had run the scenario 5,000 times. The probability of success was 94.7%. The NIM will attack Colony Harvest within the next 6 hours, Tay explained to the assembled commanders. All of their previous movements point to this location. The supply lines, the strategic value, the timing, everything matches. Vexier's crystalline form reflected the blue light of the hologram. You are certain this time? Tay wanted to say yes, but he remembered his previous failures. The data is clear, but I was certain before too. Humans and their doubts, Ambassador Thrall said, his three eyes rolling. You think so much that you begin to doubt your own thinking. It is exhausting to watch. Kai stepped forward. The analysis is sound. We should trust it. Admiral Torvin, the six-armed Kelleran, studied the display quietly. He had been the only one to support using Tay's new models after the previous failures. Deploy the fleet, he finally said. But keep reserve forces ready to respond if needed. The ships moved into position. Tay watched the countdown timer. 6 hours until the predicted attack window opened. He had checked every calculation 3 times. His brother would have told him to trust his gut, but Tay didn't work that way. He trusted data, numbers, logic. 5 hours passed. Nothing happened. Then the alarms started screaming. But they weren't coming from Colony Harvest. They were coming from the opposite side of Coalition space. The NIM had attacked Settlement Ridge, a mining outpost that Tay's models had marked with a 0.2% probability. Essentially zero. The war room exploded into chaos. Commanders shouted orders. Ships tried to change course, but they were too far away. By the time any Coalition vessel could reach Settlement Ridge, it would be over. Tay stood frozen, staring at the display. He had been so certain. The data had been so clear. How could he be wrong again? 20,000 people on that settlement, Vaxir said coldly. 20,000 lives, strategist Tay, because you told us to look the wrong direction. The models, Tay started. Your models are useless. Vaxir's voice was sharp enough to cut. You humans spend so much time thinking that you forget to see reality. You build castles in your mind and call it strategy. Kai tried to defend him. No model is perfect. The NIM are unpredictable. Then perhaps we need someone who can predict the unpredictable, Torvin said quietly. Or better yet, someone who doesn't try to predict at all. Everyone looked at him. The Kelleran Admiral brought up a file on the holographic display. It showed Hana's service record. This human pilot has avoided 17 dangerous situations over 3 years, Torvin said. Not through analysis. Not through calculation. She just leaves. And every time, disaster strikes right after. Vaxir made a sound like breaking glass. You cannot be serious. You want to base military strategy on superstition? I want to try something different than failing, Torvin replied. We have lost 4 colonies using traditional methods. Perhaps traditional methods do not work against an enemy like the NIM. The argument went on for hours. In the end, Vexer agreed to one thing. They would at least interview this pilot. If only to prove how ridiculous the idea was. Hana had never been to Coalition Command before. The building was enormous, made of some material that seemed to shift colors in the light. She felt very small walking through its corridors. Tay met her at the entrance. Thanks for coming. Did I have a choice? Hana looked around nervously. Your message said it was urgent. They want to ask you some questions. About Vara Station. And other things. What other things? Tay smiled, but it looked tired. How you knew to leave before the attack. I didn't know. I just felt, I know. That's what they want to talk about. The war room was intimidating. Hana had never seen so many high-ranking officers in one place. Commander Vexir looked like a statue made of diamonds. Admiral Torvin's 6 arms moved independently, each one doing something different. Ambassador Threll's 3 eyes watched her with obvious skepticism. Pilot Hana, Torvin said. Thank you for joining us. We have some questions about your service record. They showed her the list. 17 times she had avoided danger. 17 times she had left or changed course for no apparent reason. 17 times something bad had happened right after. I never noticed, Hana said honestly. I just react to situations. React how? Vexir asked. What analysis do you perform? None. I don't analyze. I just feel when something is wrong." The crystalline commander's glow brightened with what might have been anger. "Feelings are not strategy. War is not won by feelings. Then why are we losing?" Hannah asked before she could stop herself. The room went quiet. Kai looked like he wanted to disappear. Tay closed his eyes. Hannah realized she had probably just ended her career. But Torvin laughed. It was a strange sound, coming from a being with 6 arms and mandibles. The pilot makes a fair point. Our strategy has failed 4 times. Perhaps we are too attached to the idea of strategy itself. He brought up data on the holographic display. Battle records, attack patterns, ship movements. "Tell me, Pilot Hannah, if you were to predict where the NIM will attack next, how would you do it?" Hannah looked at all the data. Charts and graphs and probability curves filled the air around her. It was overwhelming. Tay could probably understand all of it. She couldn't. "I wouldn't look at any of this," she said finally. Vexir's glow turned almost white. "Unbelievable. This is exactly the problem with humans. You are shown data and you dismiss it. You are given analysis and you ignore it. You think so much about thinking that you forget to think at all. Or maybe you're all thinking too much," Hannah shot back. "Look at this data. You're searching for patterns, right? Trying to predict what they'll do based on what they did before? That is how strategic analysis works," Thrall said slowly. "But what if they don't have a pattern? What if they're just doing things? Random things?" Tay suddenly sat up straight. His eyes went wide. "That's impossible. Intelligence creates patterns. All thinking beings use logic to make decisions. Do they?" Hannah turned to her brother. "Or do we just assume they do because that's how we think?" The room fell silent again. Hannah could see the commanders looking at each other. The idea seemed to disturb them deeply. "You are suggesting," Vexir said carefully, "that the NIM have no strategy at all? I'm saying maybe you're looking for something that isn't there. Maybe they're not thinking. Maybe they're just acting. Then how do we fight them?" Kai asked. Hannah shrugged. "Stop trying to predict them. Stop analyzing them. Just react to them." Admiral Torvin leaned forward, all 6 arms folding in front of him. "I have a proposal. An experiment. It may be ridiculous. It may fail. But I believe we should try." Vexir's glow dimmed with suspicion. "What kind of experiment?" "We let Pilot Hannah try to predict the next attack. Not through analysis. Not through data. Through her instinct." He said the last word like it tasted strange. The argument that followed was loud and angry. But in the end, desperation won. The coalition had lost 4 colonies. Traditional strategy had failed completely. What did they have to lose by trying something new? Everything, Vexir argued. But he was outvoted. Hannah was given a station in coalition command. She would watch the sensor feeds and wait. When she felt something, she would tell them where the NIM would attack next. It was the most ridiculous military strategy in the history of the galaxy. But as Tay watched his sister prepare, he found himself hoping it would work. Because logic and analysis had gotten them nowhere. Maybe it was time to stop thinking entirely. The holographic display lit up with red warning symbols. Ships appeared out of nowhere around Outpost Valen, dozens of them, moving in erratic patterns that made no tactical sense. NIM forces detected. An officer shouted. "Multiple vessels, attack formation." No formation at all. They're just swarming. Tay grabbed the edge of the display table. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Hannah had been right. Exactly right. "Time to attack," Torvin demanded. 3 hours and 12 minutes after the pilot's prediction, another officer reported. Vexir stood frozen, his crystalline body dimmed with shock. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, deploy all forces to Outpost Vallon. Now. The war room exploded into action. Ships that had been waiting in logical positions across the border scrambled to change course. But the 20 ships already at Outpost Vallon were engaging the enemy. "Get me Captain Myra," Torvin ordered. "I want a live feed from the battle." The holographic display shifted to show the view from the Coalition flagship near Vallon. Space was filled with NIM ships, dark, organic-looking vessels that moved like schools of fish. They didn't fly in neat formations. They didn't follow standard attack patterns. They just swarmed, each ship moving independently. "Captain Mira reporting," a voice crackled over the speakers. "We have visual on approximately 40 NIM vessels. They're attacking the outpost and engaging our forces. Recommend immediate reinforcements." "Reinforcements are 20 minutes out," Torvin said. "Can you hold?" "We'll do our best, Admiral." Tay watched the battle unfold. The Coalition ships were good, experienced crews with excellent tactics. But the NIM were overwhelming them through sheer chaos. There was no pattern to predict, no strategy to counter. Just endless random aggression. "They fight like animals," Vexier said quietly. "No coordination. No planning. Just instinct." A new voice came through the speakers. "This is Outpost Vallon. We're taking heavy fire. Shields at 40%. Evacuate the colony," Torvin ordered. "All civilian ships launch immediately." Down the hall, Hana was watching the same battle on her screens. The feeling in her chest had finally eased, replaced by a different kind of pressure. She had been right. People were fighting and dying because of what she felt. Kai stood next to her, his face grim. "You saved them. If those 20 ships hadn't been there, the colony would already be destroyed. But I should have been more sure. I should have made them send more ships." "You can't know something you feel," Kai said. "That's not how feelings work. You did everything right." The battle lasted 40 minutes. By the time the main Coalition fleet arrived, the NIM were already retreating. But this time, something was different. This time, the Coalition forces managed to disable 3 NIM ships before they could escape. 3 ships. 3 intact enemy vessels to study for the first time in the entire war. The captured NIM ships were brought to the Coalition's main research station. Scientists from every species worked around the clock to understand them. Tay was there, watching through observation windows as they carefully examined the vessels. "No central computer," one scientist reported. "No navigation system. No tactical displays. Then how do they fly?" Tay asked. "We're not sure. The ship seems to respond directly to the crews. Impulses, I suppose. It's more like riding an animal than piloting a craft." Another scientist approached, her face troubled. She was Calren, with 6 arms full of data tablets. "We've examined the crew. What we found is disturbing." "Disturbing how?" "They have no command structure, no hierarchy, no leadership at all. When we tried to interrogate them, they couldn't explain their strategy because they don't have one. They just act." Tay felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What do you mean, they just act?" "I mean, they are a hive species, but not like the Morvain with their telepathic consensus. The NIM share a collective consciousness that operates on pure instinct. One of them gets an impulse to attack a location, and the impulse spreads through the hive like a virus. They all feel it and respond to it. No planning. No analysis. Just immediate action." "That's impossible," Tay said. "You can't wage war on instinct alone. And yet they have destroyed 4 of our colonies doing exactly that." The scientist set down her tablets. "Every species in the Coalition is logical to some degree. Even the most impulsive among us use reasoning to make decisions. We assume the NIM were the same. We searched for patterns in their attacks because intelligence creates patterns. But the NIM are intelligent without being rational. They think without using logic. They act without planning. Tay walked back to Coalition Command in a daze. Everything he knew about strategy was based on the idea that enemies could be predicted, that actions had reasons behind them, that intelligence meant analysis. But the NIM proved all of that wrong. They were intelligent, but they didn't think the way anyone else did. And that made them almost impossible to fight using traditional methods. When he entered the war room, he found it transformed. The hostility that had been there before was gone, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. Vexir stood at the holographic display, his crystalline form dim and still. "Strategist Tay," the commander said quietly, "I owe your sister an apology. I called her methods mysticism. I was wrong. She got lucky," Tay said automatically. "No." Vexir turned to face him. "She did not get lucky. She understood something the rest of us could not. The NIM operate on instinct, so the only way to predict them is with instinct. Logic cannot counter illogic. Analysis cannot predict randomness. Your sister knew this intuitively, even if she could not explain it." Ambassador Thrall approached, his 3 eyes blinking slowly. "The question now is, what do we do with this knowledge? How do we fight an enemy that cannot be predicted through normal means?" "We use someone who can predict them through abnormal means," Torvin said. He had just entered the room, all 6 arms carrying reports. "Which means we need Pilot Hana, and we need humans." "Why humans specifically?" Vexir asked. "Because," Torvin said, setting down his reports, "of all the species in the coalition, humans are the only ones who can choose when to think and when not to think. Every other species operates consistently. The Voth are always analytical. The Morvain always seek consensus. The Kelran always weigh multiple options simultaneously. We are what we are. And humans?" Kai asked, stepping into the room. "Humans overthink until suddenly they don't think at all. You are the only species that can toggle between deep analysis and pure instinct. That makes you unpredictable, flexible, adaptable." Torvin looked at Tay. "Your brother builds beautiful models and detailed predictions. But your sister ignores all of that and trusts her gut. Both approaches exist in the same species. That is unique." Tay thought about it. He had always been frustrated by people like Hana people who made decisions without analysis. But maybe that wasn't a flaw. Maybe it was an ability he had lost by overthinking everything. "So what now?" he asked. "Now we restructure our command," Torvin said. "We pair analytical thinkers with intuitive ones. We use both logic and instinct. And we make Pilot Na our first intuitive strategist." Vexir's glow brightened slightly. "A position that does not exist. That has never existed in any military organization." "Then we invent it," Torvin replied. "Because the alternative is losing this war." The Coalition Council met in emergency session that night. The debate was fierce. Creating a new command position based on feelings went against thousands of years of military tradition. But the evidence was impossible to ignore. Hana had predicted what all their analysis could not. The vote was surprisingly unanimous. The coalition would create the position of intuitive strategist. Hana would be the first to hold it. She would work alongside analytical strategists like Tay, providing a check on overthinking and a bridge to understanding enemies that operated on instinct rather than logic. When they told Hana, she just stared at them. "You want me to be a strategist?" she asked. "I failed military strategy class twice." "That is precisely why you are qualified," Vexir said. It might have been a joke, but with the crystalline commander, it was hard to tell. Tay put his hand on his sister's shoulder. "You know how to do something the rest of us forgot. Or maybe never learned. You know when to stop thinking and just act." But what if I'm wrong next time? Then you'll be wrong the same way I was wrong about Settlement Ridge, Tay said. The only difference is you won't have spent 6 weeks overthinking it first. Hana looked around the war room at all the commanders and ambassadors watching her. These were the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and they were asking her, a cargo pilot who failed strategy class, to help lead the war effort. Okay, she said finally. I'll try. But I'm not promising anything. That is acceptable, Torvin said. Promises are predictions. And we have learned that predictions are not always reliable. Feelings, however, Vexier added quietly, seem to work surprisingly well. Hana sat in a small room just off the main war room. 3 large screens showed sensor data from every border system. Ships appeared as dots of light. Planets glowed softly. Empty space was just black dots she had been watching for 3 days. Anything? Tay asked, bringing her a cup of coffee. He visited every few hours. Though he was no longer allowed in the main war room, the coalition had made it clear. No more human strategic input. Tay's models and calculations were done. Nothing, Hana said, taking the coffee gratefully. I'm just watching, waiting to feel something. And if you don't feel anything, Hana shrugged. Then I guess their experiment fails and I go back to flying cargo ships. You know, they're calling this the instinct test in the halls? Some of them are laughing about it. Tay sat down next to her. Vexier definitely is. He thinks this whole thing is stupid. He told the Coalition Council that humans are either overthinkers or non-thinkers, and both are equally useless. That's harsh. He's angry. 4 colonies destroyed on our watch. He needs someone to blame. Hana studied her brother's face. He looked exhausted. Are you okay? I spent 6 weeks building those models for Settlement Ridge. I was so sure. And I was completely wrong. Tay rubbed his eyes. Maybe Vexier is right. Maybe I do overthink everything. You're a strategist. You're supposed to think. But what if thinking is the problem? What if the answer is to not think at all, like you do? Hana smiled. I don't not think. I just don't analyze everything to death. There's a difference. Before Tay could respond, the door opened. Admiral Torvin walked in, his 6 arms carrying data tablets and reports. Still nothing, Pilot Hana? No, sir. The feeds all look normal to me. Perhaps because they are normal, said a cold voice. Vexier entered behind Torvin, his crystalline body glowing with barely controlled frustration. 3 days of watching screens. 3 days of waiting for feelings. This is not strategy. This is mysticism. We agreed to give this a chance, Torvin reminded him. We agreed to waste 3 days. Yes. And now those days are gone. The Nim could have attacked anywhere during that time. We were lucky they did not. Vexier turned his glowing eyes to Hana. I mean no disrespect to you, Pilot, but your previous successes were likely coincidence. Pattern recognition is a known flaw in human thinking. You see connections where none exist. Hana felt her face get hot. I don't think I'm seeing patterns. I just what? Feel things? The universe does not operate on feelings. Maybe not, Hana said quietly. But maybe some species do. Vexier made a sound like wind through crystals. Impossible. Intelligence requires logic. Without logic, there is only chaos. Commander, Torvin said firmly, we will complete the full trial period. Pilot Hana has 4 more days. Vexier left without another word. The door slid shut behind him with a sharp click. Torvin sighed, all 6 arms drooping slightly. He is not wrong to be frustrated. We are running out of time. The Coalition Council is considering pulling back from the border entirely, abandoning the outer systems to save the inner ones. That would doom millions of people, Tay said. Yes, but it would save billions. That is the logic of it. Torvin looked at Hannah. No pressure, pilot. But if you feel anything at all, please tell us immediately. After they left, Hannah turned back to her screens. Tay stayed with her, both of them watching the dots of light move across the darkness of space. Do you really feel things? Tay asked after a while. Or is Vexir right? Is it just coincidence? Hannah thought about it. I don't know. Maybe it is coincidence. But it doesn't feel like coincidence. It feels like when you walk into a room and know someone was just arguing, even though they're quiet now. You can't explain how you know. You just do. The Morvain call that emotional residue. They can sense it telepathically. I'm not telepathic. I just pay attention to things without thinking about them. Hannah paused. Does that make sense? Not really, Tay admitted. But I'm starting to think that's okay. Maybe sense isn't what we need right now. They sat in silence for another hour. Then Hannah frowned. What? Tay asked immediately. I don't know. Something about. Hannah leaned forward, studying one of the screens. It showed the outer rim near a mining colony called Outpost Vallon. There. That system. What about it? I don't know. It just feels different somehow. Tay looked at the data. Everything appears normal. No unusual ship movements. No energy signatures. Colony reports all clear. I know. But something feels off. Should I get Torvin? Hannah watched the screen for another 10 minutes. The feeling grew stronger. Not a thought, exactly. More like a pressure in her chest. An itch she couldn't scratch. Yeah, she said finally. Get Torvin. I think they're going to hit Outpost Vallon. When? Soon. Maybe 3 hours. Maybe less. Say ran from the room. Hannah kept watching the screen. That uncomfortable feeling growing stronger every minute. She had no proof. No data. No logical reason to think the Nim would attack there. But she knew. The same way she had known to leave Vara Station. The same way she had avoided danger 17 times before. She just knew. The war. Room erupted into chaos when Tay delivered Hannah's prediction. Outpost Vallon? Vexira's voice was sharp. Based on what intelligence? Based on her feeling, Torvin said calmly. Her feeling. Vexira's glow intensified. You want to move the Coalition fleet based on a human pilot's feeling? That was the experiment, Torvin reminded him. The experiment was foolish. And now you want to compound that foolishness by actually following her prediction. Vexir gestured at the holographic display. Look at the data. Outpost Vallon has no strategic value. It is a small mining colony with minimal resources. The Nim have never attacked such a small target before. Logic says they will not start now. Ambassador Kai stepped forward. Logic also said they wouldn't attack Settlement Ridge, and yet they did. One failure does not invalidate the entire concept of strategic thinking. 4 failures should, though, Torvin said quietly. The room went silent. Vexir's glow dimmed slightly. I am not suggesting we abandon analysis entirely, Torvin continued. But perhaps we should consider that our enemy does not think the way we do. And if that is true, then someone who thinks differently than us might predict them better. Someone who does not think at all, you mean? Perhaps. Is that not what you accused humans of? Not thinking? Torvin's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Now you are angry that we are taking your criticism seriously. Ambassador Threll had been quiet until now. His 3 eyes blinked slowly. I propose a compromise. Move some forces to defend Outpost Vallon, but keep the main fleet in strategic positions. If the pilot is wrong, we lose nothing. If she is right, then everything we know about warfare is wrong, Vexir said. Yes, Torvin agreed. Exactly. The vote was close. In the end, Torvin's argument won. The coalition would send 20 ships to defend Outpost Valen. Not enough to matter if this was the main attack, but enough to test Hana's prediction. Vexer insisted on keeping the main fleet in what he called logical positions, places where the meme should attack based on strategic value. Supply lines and defensive weakness dot as the ships moved into position. Kai found Hana in her small room. They're doing it, he said. Not the full fleet, but 20 ships. 20? Hana felt sick. That's not enough. If I'm right, and they only send 20 ships, people will die. If you're wrong, and they send the whole fleet, people will die somewhere else. Kai sat down heavily. Welcome to Command Decisions. There are no good choices, only less bad ones. Hana turned back to her screens. The feeling in her chest was stronger now. Almost painful. I'm right, she whispered. I know I am. Then we'll find out in a few hours. Kai sat in the war room. Tay stood next to Admiral Torvin, watching the countdown timer. 3 hours until Hana's predicted attack window. What if she's wrong? Tay asked quietly. Then the experiment fails, Torvin replied. And we go back to traditional strategy, which has also failed, but at least we understand it. And if she's right? Torvin's 6 arms folded in a complex pattern. Then we must reconsider everything we know about intelligence and warfare. That will be uncomfortable for many species. The timer counted down. 2 hours. 1 hour. 30 minutes. Vexer watched from across the room, his crystalline form absolutely still, waiting to be proven right. 15 minutes. 10.5. Then every alarm in Coalition Command started screaming at once. 6 weeks had passed since the battle at Outpost Valen. Hana still wasn't used to her new position. She had an office, now an actual office, in Coalition Command. Her title was printed on the door, Intuitive Strategist. Every time she saw it, she wanted to laugh, but nobody else was laughing anymore. She sat in her office, watching the same sensor feeds she had watched before. But now, when she felt something, people listened. 3 times over the past 6 weeks, she had predicted NIM attacks. 3 times she had been right. The Coalition had stopped 2 of those attacks completely and minimized damage from the 3rd. The war was turning around. Knock, knock, Tay said, leaning in the doorway. You busy feeling things? Always, Hana replied, smiling. What's up? Command meeting in 10 minutes. Torvin wants both of us there. Tay sat down across from her. He looked different lately, less tired, less stressed. I've been thinking about something. That's literally your job. Funny. No, I mean, I've been thinking about how we work together. You and me. You feel something. I analyze why it makes sense. Or sometimes I analyze something, and you tell me if it feels right. And? Hana asked. And I think we're better together than apart. Not just us personally. I mean humans in general. We've got this weird ability to switch between thinking and not thinking. Every other species is locked into one mode. They can't understand why we sometimes overthink and sometimes don't think at all. They used to hate that about us. They still do, kind of. But now they also respect it. Because it works. Hana thought about that. Before this war, the Coalition had seen humanity's contradictions as weaknesses. Humans were too analytical, too emotional, too impulsive, too cautious, whatever criticism fit the moment. But maybe those contradictions were actually strengths. Come on, Tay said, standing up. We're going to be late. The command meeting was different than the ones before. For the first time, Vexer actually smiled when Hana entered, or at least, his crystalline form brightened in what might have been happiness. Pilot Hana, he said. Or should I say Strategist Hana? Your promotion is official as of this morning. My what? Torvin brought up a document on the holographic display. The Coalition Council has voted to make your position permanent and grant you the rank of Junior Strategist. You will continue to work alongside Senior Strategist Tay and report directly to me. Hannah felt dizzy. 6 weeks ago, she was flying cargo ships. Now she was a junior strategist in the Coalition military. Thank you. Don't thank us yet, Ambassador Kai said, but he was smiling. You still have to actually do the job. The meeting covered the usual topics: fleet positions, supply lines, defensive preparations. But there was something different in the room. A feeling of hope that hadn't been there before. We have also received new intelligence about the NIM, Torvin said, changing the display. Thanks to the captured ships, our scientists have learned more about their biology and psychology. They are indeed a hive species that operates primarily on instinct. But they are not mindless. They can learn, adapt, and remember. Which means they'll learn to counter our new tactics eventually, Tay said. Correct. Which is why we cannot rely on the same approach forever. We must continue to adapt as well. The meeting ended with assignments for the next week. Hannah had her own assignments, now watching specific sectors, analyzing her own feelings about various threats, even training other personnel to recognize their own intuitive responses. It still felt strange. But it was working. 3 months after Outpost Valen, the Coalition scored its first major victory against the NIM, using a combination of analytical prediction and intuitive response. They had defended 7 colonies and destroyed a significant portion of the enemy fleet. The NIM were retreating to their home territory. Not defeated, but no longer unstoppable. The Coalition Council called for a special session. Hannah and Tay were both requested to attend, not as witnesses, but as representatives of Earth. Kai had insisted on it. The council chambers were enormous, with seats for representatives from all 47 member species. Hannah felt very small standing at the speaking platform. Humanity's provisional membership was granted 50 years ago, the council speaker announced. At that time, many members questioned whether humans were ready to join the coalition. Your species was criticized for being too analytical, too emotional, too unpredictable. Hannah glanced at Tay. He was listening carefully, his face neutral. The NIM War has taught us something important, the speaker continued. We have learned that what we saw as weaknesses in humanity are actually unique strengths. The ability to think deeply and act instinctively, often within the same individual, is something no other species possesses. Vexier stood from his seat. I wish to speak. The chamber grew quiet. The crystalline commander walked to the platform, his body glowing softly. I criticized humans more than most, Vexier said. I called them overthinkers. I said they were paralyzed by analysis. And I was not entirely wrong. Strategist Tay himself will admit he sometimes thinks too much. A pause. But I was also not entirely right. Because humans do not only overthink. They also act without thinking at all. And somehow, they know when to do which. He turned to face Hana and Tay directly. Strategist Tay builds models that consider thousands of variables. Strategist Hana ignores all variables and trusts her instinct. Both are humans. Both are valuable. Together, they are formidable. The chamber murmured with agreement. I propose, Vexier continued, that we remove humanity's provisional status. They have proven themselves not despite their contradictions, but because of them. I vote to accept humanity as full members of the Galactic Coalition. One by one, representatives from the other species stood and voiced their agreement. The Kelran, the Morvain, even the notoriously skeptical Threnny. When the vote was complete, it was unanimous. humanity was officially a full member of the Galactic Coalition. That night, Hannah and Tay stood on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. Earth was visible in the distance, a small blue dot among millions of lights. "Can you believe this?" Tay asked. 6 months ago, I was failing to predict NIM attacks. You were flying cargo ships. Now we're heroes of the Coalition. We're not heroes, Hannah said. We just did what we're good at. That's the point, though, isn't it? The galaxy spent decades telling us we overthink everything. They were so focused on that criticism that they missed the other half. What other half? That we can also not think at all. We can analyze for months or decide in seconds. We can be the most logical beings in the room or the most impulsive. And we can choose which one we need to be. Tay smiled. Every other species is consistent, predictable. But humans? We're contradictions. And apparently, the galaxy needs contradictions. Hannah thought about her 17 lucky escapes. About the feeling she got before danger. About how she had won a battle without a single thought. Do you think you'll ever stop overthinking things? She asked her brother. Probably not. It's who I am. Tay looked at her. Do you think you'll ever start thinking more? Probably not. It's who I am. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Two humans who couldn't be more different, who represented the contradiction their species was famous for. You know what's funny? Hannah said eventually. They said humans overthink. They were right. But they thought it was our only trait. They didn't realize we're also the species that can win without a single thought. Both things are true, Tay agreed. And I think that's what scares them. Not that we think too much or too little, but that we can switch between the two. That makes us unpredictable. Unpredictable is good, though. Right? In this galaxy? Yes, very good. Below them, ships move through the darkness of space. Coalition vessels from dozens of species, all working together. And somewhere among them, human ships flew alongside alien ones, finally recognized as equals. The NIM War wasn't over. There would be more battles, more challenges, more situations where humanity would need to prove itself. But something fundamental had changed. The galaxy no longer saw human contradictions as a flaw. They saw it as a weapon. Ambassador Kai joined them on the observation deck, carrying 3 glasses of something that sparkled. What are we drinking? Hannah asked. Kelrin's celebration wine. Torvin sent it. He said it's for the 2 humans who taught the galaxy that thinking and not thinking are equally important. They raised their glasses. To overthinking, Tay said. To not thinking at all, Hannah added. To humanity, Kai finished. The only species crazy enough to do both. They drank, watching the stars and the ships and the endless darkness between them. Somewhere out there, the NIM were planning their next move, though planning was probably the wrong word for a species that operated on pure instinct. But now the Coalition had its own instinct to counter them. It had Hannah and others like her who could feel things without thinking about them. And it had thinkers like Tay who could analyze those feelings and turn them into strategy together. They were something new. Something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that could overthink or not think at all, depending on what the situation needed. A species that won battles through careful analysis and split-second. Instinct, a species that was finally home among the stars. Not despite being contradictory, but because of it. Hannah looked at her reflection in the observation window. She saw a cargo pilot who became a strategist.